So this is going to be a tutorial on the MBZ model fractal PO3s indicator. It's a brand new indicator visualizing MBZ and or inversions on the higher time frame with PO3 candles. PO3 stands for the power of 3. It's just how a candle forms here: accumulation, manipulation on the wicks, and distribution into where the close is of a candle. Now we have the original indicator, which is just MBZ models on the current time frame. So here you can see 1 minute MBZs, inversions, liquidity pools, etc. But now we have the power of seeing higher time frame, MBZs and inversions at the same time, which amplifies the current time frame entries, as we can see here. So default settings, you'll get an automatic time frame alignment. What that means is I'm currently on the 1 minute. It'll show you 15-minute PO3s. If I go to the 3 minute, it'll show me 30-minute PO3s. And if I go to the 5, it'll show me 1 hour PO3s. So this is useful because it doesn't require any time wasted on switching, drawing, time frames, etc. You can just see it all here. And you also see the MBZs drawn on the chart here as well. So if I go to the 5 minute, same thing. I'm going to be able to see 1 hour PO3s, 1 hour MBZs, and the fractal entries within that specific price action. So let's go into the settings and see how we can customize this according to what the user wants to look at. So starting from the general settings, you're going to find the first setting, which is enable PO3 status direction symbol. What does that mean? It just means this little symbol right up here, that down arrow. It's telling you the current status of the time frame you're looking at. So here's a 15-minute. It has a down arrow, meaning it's bearish. You can customize the color. So if I want a brighter red, whatever color I want, it'll apply it on there. And I can also make it bigger. But that's important because it tells me with just a quick glance the current direction of the PO3. So you can see there's some bearish opportunities here. Bearish type 4 MBZ, a bearish inversion. And it uses the most recent opportunity to tell you which direction it's going. So that's pretty useful in that regard. And next step would be your enable PO3 levels. That's going to be right over here. So your vertical lines, your opening prices, they're a little hard to see here, but I'll make them darker so they're easier to see. It's just to help you gauge where to find an entry on. So, if you have a bearish opportunity, for example, on this MBZ, on the next PO3 candles, you might want to enter above the opening price, as we can see here, for the best opportunities. And so that's what this section is all about. You can also view the start times of the PO3 candles. So here you have, in this case, 15 minutes, 15-minute intervals. That kind of helps you understand the way the candles are printing as well. So all that's pretty useful in that regard. Now here is going to be your reorder PO3. Super important, and we'll get to that in a second. First though, we're going to go into the PO3 settings. PO3 candles. Notice on the default settings, it only has one on, which is PO3 number 2. That's this one here. And if I want more PO3 candles, I can enable the first and third as well. Each has its own respective auto settings. So what that means is the normal time frame alignment that a lot of people are used to is going to be PO3 number 2. So for example, I'm on the 1 minute. It's going to show me 15-minute PO3s, which is perfect. But let's say I want to view 5-minute PO3s. Well, if I just put enable PO3 number 1 with the auto setting, then it's going to show me in a second here 5-minute PO3s. You can customize this, so if you want just different time frame in general, maybe you want to look at 30-minute PO3s on the first one, you can do so as well. And it's just going to customize it for you, depending on what time frame alignment you want to use personally, right? I highly suggest just keeping on auto, but that is up to you. And of course, you can change and customize the colors of the candles. That's pretty common sense here, just customizing the bodies, the borders, the wicks, PO3 size, the candle size. And these settings are pretty important to understand here. The manual offset and the distance between PO3s. So for example, manual offset is just going to be the distance from the current bar to where it starts drawing the PO3. So if I put a lot more, for example, I put 50, it's going to not plot it here, it's going to plot it way over here. And that's just because it's 50 bars from the current bar. Does that make sense? So default is of course just going to be 10. I recommend just keeping it on default, but you can customize it. Distance between PO3s, that is when you have more than one PO3 on. So if I have both of these on with different time frames, again, you can choose the distance between those PO3s in case you just want to view the power 3 candles in a different regard. So for example, here I just changed it to 20. It's going to give more space between these two, as we can see. So again, it's just depending on how you want to customize. And of course, we have our labels. So we have our enable labels here, which we can turn off completely. And we can also show the countdown timer, which is what it's showing here, and the PO3 times. So this is useful because if you want to check like a specific time that this happened at, let's say, for example, this popped up here, which we'll get to in a second as to what this is. This popped up, you're like, huh, what time did it format? 13:45 is when it started. It confirmed it at 2 p.m. Cool, where is it on over here? And so you can turn on that setting, PO3 times, and that way you can view the different times on the PO3s. So you can kind of like get the idea of which PO3 is doing what. And that can be insightful for you if you're looking for specific timings on which candle it is. If you're getting, a little bit lost with all the PO3 candles here, you can turn that on and you can see what time it's at. And we also have the capability of turning on fair value gaps for the PO3 candles and visualizing those. So here I just turn it on. You're going to see that there is a SIBI. If we turn on the labels here, the label settings, bullish, bearish, size, pretty common settings. And if we turn on the labels, you can see it's going to tell me SIBI, 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 and the midline, which I can turn on or off. If I want to extend all the fair value gaps in the PO3 candles to the right side, you simply turn on extend to current PO3 candle, which is going to be this candle here. And all of these fair value gaps are going to extend to the same location, as we can see, for a cleaner look, if that's what you're looking for. Otherwise, when it's off, this is going to be your manual offset setting. That's what this setting is. So for example, you can change it to 5, 10, max 10, and it's going to extend it out further if you wanted to view it in that direction, as we can see. So next up would be including the volume imbalances. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to zoom in here real quick. Between these two candles, the wicks in between, that's going to be your volume imbalance. It's an ICT term. If you want to visualize that, you just turn on this button here, show VIBs. It's going to colorize it based off this setting here. Okay. And you can see that it's going to display the volume balances that are nested inside. Now, if we don't want to include the volume balances into the fair value gaps, then we turn that off and we can see them there. Next up would be inversion fair value gaps. So let me just turn off the fair value gaps for now. And we can see that on the chart, it's already displaying an inversion. So you can choose the style of that, whether it's a line, a box, whether it's a line or a box or both. if you want to view the line and the box of the inversion fair value gap, then you can choose to do so as well. So it's pretty useful in that regard. Include VIBs is also applied to inversion fair value gaps. So if you have that setting on, it's going to integrate it into the inversions as well. Now, I recommend just keeping it online. It's a more minimalistic style, but if you want to view the box, go ahead of viewing the actual inversion. I recommend just keeping on the line setting though. You can also turn on labels for inversions, pretty common settings, colors, sizing, and your total inversions to display on the PO3 candles. You can also view invalidated inversions if you want to backtest with 3 PO3 candles from up here. So if you want to backtest and view historical price action with the inversions, then you can do so as well. And then this setting is pretty important. It's your clustered inversion fair value gap filter. So if there's a consecutive inversion fair value gaps, which we can find an example of maybe over here, it's going to help you gauge inversion fair value gaps in a cleaner way. So you can see how if there is bearish inversions, let's just backtrack a little bit here. It's going to show me these bearish inversions on the PO3 candles in a cleaner way with that setting. So here you can see I only have 2 lines drawn for inversions, and that is because there is the enable clustered filter for the inversions. So if I increase that, what this means is that if an inversion happens, it's going to cluster them together and just focus on one based off this setting here. So if you increase it, it's going to look for 5 candles after to only validate this inversion here. If you have it off, well, it's going to show every single inversion here, for example. Bearish one here, and another bearish one here. So it's pretty useful in that regard. Look back for inversion fair value gaps, pretty common sense setting. It's just how far back the PO3 candles look for a fair value gap to get disrespected to turn into an inversion fair value gap. That's what that setting is. And then next up, we have liquidity MBZs. So this is where the sauce starts to come in. Before we take a look at that, let's just look at an example with the current time frame MBZ indicator. And we can spot some examples here on the 15 with past opportunities with potential MBZs. So we just backtrack here. Probably going to spot one over here, I think. We shall see. There it is, type 2 MBZ. Okay, so let's just, or type 3, right? We'll just go from here. So what I see here on the 15-minute based off this indicator, which is the MBZ model for the current time frame, the Pro Plus, you can see there's a type 3 MBZ. We took out liquidity, a 4-hour high, close above it, bearish reversal past the midpoint of that body. That confirms the MBZ. And so it plots it here on the 15-minute. If I go to the 1 minute with that fractal PO3 indicator, it's going to show me that type 3 MBZ as well. So now you can see it's marked on the chart here on the right side, and it's also marked on the chart on the left side. So that's important because I can then use this indicator here for a fractal opportunity and a fractal entry. Because both are bearish, I might look for bearish opportunities within that area right here to take it down to the sell side. So that's where this setting comes into play. It's basically customizing the liquidity MBZs, direction, which type you want to look at, the labels, which is going to be located here. And if you have multiple power of threes on, based off the upper settings here, these settings here on the 1, 2, and 3, this is where you choose the liquidity, which is super important, of what liquidity the PO3 looks for when it comes to the liquidity MBZs. So because we have that there, if I turn off auto, and instead of 4 hour, maybe I want to look at 1 hour, we might get a different result. Because I'm on the 1 minute chart here, it's using a 15-minute PO3. It's using the 1 hour liquidity for the 15-minute opportunities. So if I change it to the daily, we might get a different opportunity there as well. So that's what these settings are for. You can see how it disappears at that point because it's looking at previous daily high and low liquidity. I recommend just keeping it on auto. And then the next setting would be your PO3 coloring. So you can choose what color to make the MBZ. Bearish direction, bullish direction. Same thing with your zones. You can choose the color scheme there. Zone transparency changes the zone color. So for example, you can see I have it on 90. If I change it to 20, it's going to make the zone dark. And then these settings here just control the levels and the labels as well. But if I make it a 20, it's going to make it really dark, as we can see. Everything is pretty much fully customizable. I'm not going to go over these settings because they're pretty common sense. You can also choose the offset. So if you want to move the MBZ on the PO3 candles further to the right, you can increase it. So you can see it there. Just gives you a better visual on what to look for. You can view invalidated MBZs in case you want to backtest. And you can also have a consolidation filter as well for the liquidity MBZs. So that means if there is multiple liquidity MBZs together, which is kind of rare, then the consolidation filter is going to filter those out based on the setting here. Next step would be your type 4 MBZs. It's pretty much the same thing. There's no reason to go over these settings. It's the same exact logic and settings as the liquidity MBZ settings. So they're pretty much the same thing. The only difference is you can change the look back, which is kind of important, I suppose. Let's go back here to the current price action. You can change the look back of the fair value gap that it looks for. So if you want, for example, immediate price action, right now it's on 35, that's the default setting. But if you want an immediate price action momentum type of opportunity, where you want a reaction off a fair value gap pretty soon, pretty quick, then if you change it to 3, for example, this fair value gap right here, it's going to look for an MBZ 3 candles after it forms. And if it doesn't form, it doesn't validate it. But if you increase it to however many candles you want, that's where it starts looking for fair value gaps from the past on those PO3 candles. And then here, these settings are pretty similar, same exact thing. So I'm just going to go over one of them. It's going to be your MBZs on the actual chart. So for example, you can show these PO3 MBZs, not just on the PO3s, but on the actual chart and treat it as a zone. So here you can see there's a bearish type 4 MBZ off the 15-minute. You can enable the labels, put them wherever you want, the sizing. So that can be helpful for you. So for example, if I put them on the top, it's going to place it up here. And that way I can see the timing, the type of MBZ it is, it's a type 4, and the time frame. So if I'm using the other indicator here, I can look for a bearish opportunity from this area after it forms. So it confirmed it at this time here. And I can look for a bearish opportunity, take a short down to a low, and or sell side liquidity pool. That's what that means right there. So that's pretty useful in that regard. And if we go back to the settings here, all of that, again, is pretty customizable. Let's say, for example, I want to look at 15-minute power of 3 candles, which is right here. But maybe I want to look at 4-hour MBZs on the actual chart. So what you will do is go here and change the source. So if I want to look at 4-hour, it's going to show me 4-hour here, or 1 hour in this case, right? It'll show me 1 hour MBZs in that regard. Very, very useful if you want to customize how it works there. And then of course you have the extend settings, the close levels. All of these settings are pretty common sense. You can also choose to only display MBZs associated with these PO3 candles. Right now the setting is on, so it's only showing me these MBZs right here, as we can see. But if I turn that off, it's going to show me MBZs from the past. If I zoom out. So here you can see there's a type 4 MBZ from before, and there might be some more in the past, but we'll see. And that's helpful if you want to fully customize the way you view the charts. So for example, let's get to a little bit of customization here. If you want to just view the MBZs on the chart, turn everything off. So this turns off the visual for the PO3 candles. This turns off the start times, but now you have the MBZs on the actual chart. So here you can see that if you want a cleaner opportunity, a cleaner chart, you can quite literally just have the chart just like this. So I hope this brought insight into the settings and how to customize it to a certain extent. This is a really powerful indicator, so I'm really happy with the results from it. And yeah, I hope this brought some insight.